Brandon Marshall is in the social media and the news for a couple of different things, but the one we're going to talk about right now is the breakup of the I Am Athlete podcast. And this is a podcast that I particularly enjoyed because, and I know D-Lo enjoyed too, because we both athletes and we love the conferences that they had about.
We're both podcasters.
We both podcasters now, right? And we love the conversations that they had about athletes in general and social things in general as well, because just coming from an athlete and their perspective. And we kind of, most athletes share most of the same perspectives as far as, what goes on in the sports world and also what goes on in the world in general. And he came out and saying that the breakup was, I'm going to go on the record and say it was messy and he is in big debt about it. So D-Lo, how do you feel about what Brandon Marshall is saying about the breakup, the I Am Athlete podcast, and how everything has transpired to this point?
I can't say that I feel sorry for Brandon Marshall.
Okay.
And the reason that is because as a fellow podcaster, I know what it's like to get on here, to make content that's entertaining, but to not get too far away from yourself and the things that you say at the core, who you are as a core. Mm-hmm. Because in creating content on an ongoing basis, like I Am Athlete did, or like we do every week, or, when we start to pick up a bigger following, maybe even going on other podcasts to, talk about the things that we experience or, just do that. You create a lot of content. And so in that, you say a lot of stuff that you actually mean, but you probably forget that you have said. And so the reason I can't feel sorry for Brandon Marshall in this situation, even though losing the amount of money that he said he's lost definitely is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. And I don't wish that on anybody. But on Tyreek Hill's podcast, and I don't even think he remembers he did this or said it. I'm just going to say he didn't. Brandon Marshall talks about the origination of the I Am Athlete podcast and how he was like, listen, I'm going to start this podcast. I want all of us to have a split in it. Don't worry about the money. I'll put up the money. I just want us to have a conversation. We can talk about, different events, different things of the athlete experience, the social injustices in America, so on and so forth. I think at the time when they first originated, I don't think the other 3 or 4 individuals that were involved were too interested in having a split in it because they didn't see the success in it. They just wanted to, have an outlet. They started this podcast during the pandemic, and then it kind of, blew up. They saw success in it. I mean, they saw success. And so then once the success came is when one individual I know for sure came in and wanted equity in it. Mm-hmm. And that's when Brandon Marshall was like, nah, the money has changed. The price has gone up. But before he was like, don't worry about it. I want everybody to have a split in it. And so now that they all have split and it seemed to be messy. And I think this is the reason why is because the individuals that did come to the table and wanted the equity in it.
Why are you not saying names?
Well, Fred Taylor and Channing Crowder, when they did come to the table and was trying to.
And Reggie Wayne too.
I didn't think Reggie Wayne was involved in the trying to get equity, but if he was, okay. So include all of them individuals. So when they did come to the table and trying to get the equity, and he says the price is going up on them. Well, when you originally started this, you said you wanted everybody to sign papers so that they can have equal split in the podcast, in the company that they were starting, and that, didn't have to worry about the money. But now you're saying that the price is going up. So I can't say I feel sorry for Brandon Marshall in this situation because he kind of put it on himself. I know a verbal contract isn't always binding, and things that you say you can typically get out of, but when it's amongst friends, sometimes what you say is a verbally binding contract, and it might not hurt you financially, or you might not have any legal ramifications from it, but you do lose friendships over stuff that you say and don't hold up to. So I can't feel sorry for him in this situation.
I can agree with you in that, you know what I'm saying? And I think, you know, he's emotional right now because he honestly saw big things with the podcasting space because they started around the pandemic. You know what I'm saying? And that's when a lot of podcasts started around the pandemic because everybody was home, didn't really have much to do.
Nothing
they started either gaming channels or they started podcasts. And I agree with you. I agree with you that, you know, if you say that up front and say, hey, don't worry about the money, I got the money, you know what I'm saying, I want everybody to eat, yada yada yada, then you come back and say, I think his beef was that, just like you said, they didn't have the dream that Brandon Marshall had. They didn't have they didn't see that it was going to blow off and that it was going to blow up and take off the way that it did. So they didn't see the dream, they didn't see the vision that Brandon Marshall saw. So they was like, don't worry. Whenever he was like, don't worry about the money, they was like, all right, cool, because I don't think it's going to blow up anyway. But then whenever it actually blew up and they saw that they were starting to get sponsorships and they were starting to gain followers and starting to gain traction and starting to, you know, gain notoriety in the podcast space, now that they want to have some equity stake in the company, Brandon Marshall was like, well, nah, you ain't believing my dream 3 years ago. Now all of a sudden.
But if that's the case, then make sure that you reiterate that after nobody, you know, or emphasize that when nobody, you know, take stock into what you're saying. Say, all right, well, listen, I try to let you guys get in from ground zero. That's not what you wanted. All good. Now, if you try to come back later on, then it's going to be a price. I don't think that was explained
it wasn't relayed
to those individuals, because if it was, then I don't think this would have been a case. Or, you know, I don't think this split, it may have still happened, but I don't think it would have been as messy to be like, okay, understand, we'll just go start our own thing. And,
for sure.
You know, because everybody benefited from this situation. It seems like other than Brandon Marshall, because the show that spun off from this was the pivot, and then they bring in Ryan Clark, and now it's like they're above I Am Athlete. So I mean, you know, even though they didn't take heed to what he was saying initially, they did benefit from it now, and they didn't have to pay anything into or pay anything to gain equity into it. They could start from the ground up with their own thing. And now I don't know what they got going on. Like Channing Crowder has new teeth. I'm saying like it's all kind of stuff that they're gaining now from being their own entity and starting their own thing. So I mean, listen.
I mean, from my perspective, I totally agree with you. You got to reiterate that communication is key, 100%. Like,
just like talking about business.
So we're talking about business and relationships. Communication is key. Business is a relationship, so communication is always going to be key. So if you tell them up front, don't worry about the money, I'm cool. You also got to say, you know, you also got to come back and like D-Lo said, hey, you ain't believe in the dream. That shit is up. I wanted you to get in from the beginning. You had the opportunity to get in from the beginning. Now all of a sudden we up, and now you want to all of a sudden get in and have some equity stake in this entity. Then, but see, it's like this though. So a lot of this came out on Freaky Friday with Cam Newton, and Cam even was like, if I felt like I'm a part of this entity and I help this entity grow, I should feel like I'm entitled to some of that. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of what I put in from the beginning.
Entitlement is what get us a lot in trouble.
Entitlement is what gets us in trouble. I was just about to say that. Entitlement is the problem in the situation, is because you didn't put in for the entitlement that you have right now. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you did. You put the sweat equity in.
You put the sweat equity in.
Agreed. But I think the issue, you know, finish. I'm sorry. I keep interrupting you.
You're
so you can't finish
your
thought.
But you know, I can see both. I can honestly see both sides. I can see Brandon Marshall's plight to say, look, you know I said this, and now I think he's very emotional because of the debt that he's in, because the number is crazy. $12 million is crazy, and he's in $12 million in debt, and he felt like a lot of that could have been that blow could have been softened a little bit if his boys on the podcast would have helped him, because they're all very, very notable NFL players. Reggie Wayne was a great receiver. Fred Taylor was a great running back. Channing Crowder was a great linebacker. Like, they were all really good players in the NFL, and they all have made pretty good money, but they just didn't see the vision that Brandon Marshall saw, so they won't really worry about putting the money up at first. If you're going to put it up. You know what I'm saying? But now with the sweat equity that they've put in, and they saw what's going on with the podcast and how it was growing, they were like, well, this is what I feel like I deserve, because I've helped this platform grow. So, I mean, I can see both sides, and I can see you want to get in. I'm gonna stop in a second, but I can see both sides, but it's like communication, bro. The communication is always key, bro. You got to make sure that you talk these things out, especially in business. It's got to be business before business separate from personal. I know these your boys, but in this business situation, you got to put things on paper, and you got to make sure that everybody understands what needs to be kicked in to get something out from this situation. So that way everybody doesn't have any surprises coming from at the end when everything's actually pop off. So I can see both sides. What you got going? What you got, D-Lo?
No, I mean, I just think money is always when you lose it, losing money is always a hard pill to swallow. It's always a great lesson to learn from. I think if he may say now, because he's in his emotional state, they also may say the same thing. I think he would say he wouldn't change a thing. He would do it the same way. But realistically, I think if he was able to go back and do what he said that he started to do, but nobody ever actually came to the table to do, is sign the paper, draw some paperwork up and have everybody sign it. That way you have that legally binding contract. And so now if they believe in it so much, then they sign their name on that paper, then you can have whatever it needs to be drawn up on the back end and say, all right, so you believe in the business enough to sign your name on the dotted line. This is what is going to entail for you to receive kickback from this. Or if he wanted to, stay with how he originated the whole idea, I'm going to give you all this percentage of the business. I'm going to always have the majority stake, but you all can have this portion of the business. You can work that off by appearing on the show a number amount of times or just being a part of the show. I mean, you said earlier, good business and relationships are both good. No, you said good businesses. What did you say? You said something about businesses and relationships.
Communication is key in both business and relationships. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like good relationships or good businesses stem from good relationships.
Agreed.
And so that could be in-house relationships. That can be the relationships that you build with your customers, whatever the case may be. Good relationships good businesses stem from good relationships. And so I think that these individuals thought they had a good relationship, but when you enter money into a relationship, you truly see how somebody feels about you. Yeah. And so, bringing it full circle for us which is why I always try to make sure that I am transparent with you with anything that I would like to do with the podcast and vice versa. We're very transparent, but we also have 20 plus years of relationship of knowing each other. Yep. And there's certain things that you might not say verbally that I kind of pick up on and vice versa. Yeah. So, yeah. And so I just feel like this whole situation could have been avoided had the lines of communication been truly open from the beginning. But, the pivot is booming. I think Brandon Marshall is trying to find his footing with I Am Athlete. He has a couple of different people that's included in that show now, and that it's actually a brand. It's actually a business in itself. Like, he has apparel and all that stuff. He spun off I Am Athlete, NASCAR, and all that different. So he's trying to find his footing.
I Am Woman and I Am NASCAR. Right. Yep.
So he's trying to find his footing, and I think if he keeps going, he'll get back to it.
I think so too. Thank you for watching this video. If you made it this far and you like what you see, there's a video on the screen right here. Make sure you click that and view that. We think you're gonna love it. Also, we almost at that 450 subscriber mark that we're trying to hit, man. So hit that subscribe button right here as well. And we on all your streaming platforms, wherever you find your podcasts.